Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Hello and welcome to our weekly Women Today podcast. This was the week that the UK voted to leave the EU. No, really. It was also the week we heard about something called crazy monkey defence. We learned all about the beauty and skill of dressage and were encouraged to get interested in the stock market. But we started the week with a visit from Rhiann Jones, who founded and runs the Big Manx Community. That's when she's not saving lives as a junior doctor at Nobles Hospital.
So I am a junior doctor. I'm a foundation year 2 trainee, which means that I'm about 18 months since qualifying at the moment. I currently work in A&E. I have a varied shift pattern. So I'll be seeing patients in A&E either through minor injuries, major injuries, also involved in trauma calls. The shift varies really. I was working nights this weekend and then a few days off now before going back to days. So.
And you've had how much sleep before coming on the show today?
I have about 3 hours.
Oh my word, and she looks so bright and glamorous. She's in the dress and everything. It's amazing, listeners. And you must have had a busy weekend because it was the parish walk, of course. Did you have many people coming in?
It was quite busy for us, yeah. I mean, there's not as many as I anticipated actually, but it was quite busy.
So have you now chosen your sort of specialist field then?
Yes, I have. So I want to go into anaesthetics. So I need to do some more training for that. It's about another 7 years of training.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So in order to be a consultant anaesthetist. But I'm going to have a little bit of time between taking on that next challenge, really, to just carry on enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. And then I'll go on to do that. Hopefully.
Why anaesthetics? Because I would have thought you said obviously you're in A&E at the minute and that must present so much variety to your job. But anaesthetics, is it not quite sort of samey?
I mean, it can be. The thing about anaesthetics is that there's so many different things you can do in it. You can be putting people to sleep every day for operations, for example, but then also it's also the anaesthetists that run ITU, and we have fantastic anaesthetists here on the island, which really inspired me, and they have quite a varied job, really. They can be being part of the air ambulance, they can be taking patients to theatre, but also looking after them on intensive care. So there is such a variety there, and that they've really been the people that have inspired me to do that.
And speaking of the air ambulance, what was TT like for you this year?
Yes, it was very busy. I was predominantly working in A&E during that time. I did fly a bit, but mostly I was working in A&E.
So you did actually go out in the air ambulance, did you?
Yeah, we do. So there's a group of us. I wasn't on call, but they sometimes call around to say, can you go? So there was an event where I went, but most of the time they have on-call people, so every day is covered by different people. And at the moment in A&E, it's quite difficult for me to fit everything in, but it's something that I'll be doing for the next year here. So. It's
interesting that, because I don't know I've been intrigued to know what the atmosphere is like up at the hospital over TT, because I suppose, it just has to be all hands on deck. But do you ever get, feelings of frustration at the fact that obviously there's a lot of quite sometimes very serious but often avoidable accidents, during TT week that is obviously adding to the workload and obviously the stress of all that? Do you ever get frustrated during TT?
No, I mean, I think there's such a fantastic level of support. So we have doctors that come over as well to help us during the time. And there's also the manpower is better than other days. So we have really good senior support. So my consultant in the A&E will be there. They'll be there attending any major calls. So there's lots of support. So for me, especially as a junior, it's good to have that level of support, but also to get the experience and to be encouraged to be involved and to learn, really. That's the main thing.
Just remind us what the Big Manx Community is.
Okay, so this is a charity which I set up with my mum, actually, and we decided to put it together because we wanted to have a way of being able to raise money in the community, but not having a specific cause to give it to. So the Big Manx Community, where BIG stands for Believing in Good, is really a collection of people that raise money at different events and then decide where they would like that money to be given to. So, for example, last year, some of the people we gave money to included Tabitha's Trust, British Heart Foundation. This year we're doing the show for the Alzheimer's Society, IOM, and the Manx Kidney Patient Association. So it's really an idea that will enable us to fundraise but grow with the community, so to speak. So as the needs of the island change and develop, we can try and accommodate that. That's the idea is really behind it.
Fantastic. And you've had some support from quite a big local organisation recently, haven't you?
We have. For the last 3 years, actually, the comedy show's been supported by Poker Stars, which I'm really, really pleased that they've been able to be a part of that, and that they've been a really solid support for us being able to do the show. So it means that any of our expenses are covered by PokerStars for the show, and then anything that we are able to raise for the show itself goes directly to charity. So last year we raised over £7,000 for charity just from one night, and we wouldn't be able to do that without PokerStars. So really, I'm very grateful for that.
So tell us about this year's show then.
Okay, so it's on the 2nd of July at the Gaiety Theatre, and it's a show, it's a comedy show, so it's sketches and songs that have been written either by myself or by Dr. Matt Todd, who's one of the renal consultants, and also the sketches that have been contributed by Mr. Ian Wright, who's one of the orthopaedic consultants at the hospital as well. So it's a good balance there between a junior doctor's view, a medical consultant's view, a surgical view, and it's all coming together really to just play on things that happen in through songs and sketches, things we've seen, things that have funny moments, for example, all to go on stage and hopefully for both people from the hospital but also the public to enjoy.
And who's actually taking part in it? Who's performing?
Okay, so we have such a variety in the cast. So it's everyone works in the hospital, and we have doctors, nurses, pharmacists, administration. We have healthcare assistants. It's really every day we rely on teamwork in the hospital, and it's something that is really supportive. We have training that together, simulation scenarios where we work on tackling difficult scenarios in a team. So in order for us to all work together in this kind of environment, have a bit of fun is really nice.
But how do you have time? Because you guys must be the busiest people on the Isle of Man up at the hospital. How have you got time to write and rehearse?
I think, in all honesty, probably we don't have time, and we kind of fit it in. So a lot of the stuff happens, late night writing. That's where the best ideas really seem to come to life anyway. And then we're very flexible. So we'll work rotas and antisocial hours. So there will be times where we just can't all come to rehearsals. Though people will stand in, and then if it needs be, kind of all learn different roles until the night. Really, it all should come together in these next 2 weeks.
So are your fellow colleagues quite eager to perform, or do you have to really sort of give them a bit of a nudge to get involved?
I am quite known for going around the hospital and kind of making people involved, recruiting people. But everyone is really enthusiastic. We've got some people that have been involved from the very beginning, and they're really passionate about it. And I think that as it grows and people are seeing the show every year, that as more people want to be involved, yeah.
3 now, and our studio guest today is Ivan Kelly. Now, I described you, Ivan, at the top of the show as an equine expert, and you sort of poo-pooed that a little bit. How would you describe yourself?
I'm a dressage trainer.
A dressage trainer, okay. So first of all, for those of us out there who do not know, how would you describe dressage?
It is a difficult one to describe. I mean, people will be slightly more familiar with it because of the London Olympics, where there was a couple of gold medals. But it's basically just dancing with horses. I mean, that's the easiest way to describe it.
That sounds so awesome. So you would class yourself as dancing as well, then?
I'm a dancer, yes.
Oh, I love that. It's all about communication, though, isn't it? Because some of these moves that you're doing with the horse are so particular. Yeah. So you must have to have a fantastic relationship with the animal.
Well, it's a basic system that you then apply to a specific horse. So, and you have a system of signals, and then you build upon the signals. So the signals never ever change. So you can have a horse forever, but the signals, you might do different stuff, but the signals aren't different. So there's a basic kind of set of guidelines for communication.
And you've obviously been doing this for quite some time. So is there a particular horse you've worked with over the years that you've just really sort of connected with then?
Well, I'm probably particularly proud of the horse that I own. I am a little bit biased. His proper name is Don Rosario, but we call him Rex because he is just a giant Labrador. And I've had him for nearly 7 years.
You say giant. This horse is enormous. I have met Rex, and he is an incredible animal. He's just beautiful. And you keep him very shiny.
Although you're a dressage trainer, I presume you ride the horses an awful lot as well.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do the two work hand in hand, or are they completely different sort of things?
I think they have to overlap a little. When you teach, you want to have the broadest picture you can get to be able to then teach the person. And sometimes that means maybe sitting on their horse to have a better idea of what they're actually feeling. Mm-hmm. But you can teach without sitting on board. I think it's better to do both. It just gives you more ammunition to yell at them.
But he's very lovely, really, ladies and gentlemen. Now, talking about communication, I have to say, when I was a kid, I had a fabulous experience. I was really fortunate to be able to witness the work of Monty Roberts, who I'm sure you know of Monty, who's classed as the horse whisperer. And there's a quote of his, which is, "Horses are our silent partners. When we learn their language, this partnership grows strong." Have you learned the language of horse, Ivan?
It certainly taught me a lot, that's for sure. This is, I think, the extraordinary thing about horses is they offer this gift to everybody. You know, whatever your mindset, whatever your brain is, whatever way you feel you communicate, the horse is going to change that. So for me, it was about finding a quieter voice and allowing myself to be a little bit softer. And you learn through, again, for me, dressage, because you have to ride the horse that you have in the moment, not the horse that you think you should have, and not the horse that you had. So you have to let go of all the frustrations of life. You have to let go of all the expectations, all the goals, all the ambitions, all the needs and wants, and you have to focus in on that very moment, what's happening. And that's quite an extraordinary thing when it happens.
And because they also pick up on everything we're feeling, don't they?
Yeah.
They're amazing animals. What do you think about this whole idea of horse whispering then?
I'm a little suspicious. No, I'm not. It's an extraordinary thing. But I try in the industry to not label things like horse whispering, because then it makes it sound like it's something magical or something that people can't have themselves. I think horses offer this gift to everybody that comes near them. And if we opened that idea up through a system of training, which is dressage, you can give that to every single person that comes near them.
And I think that's the other thing. I totally agree with you, because I think, you know, I've been around horses a bit in my life, and you see this animal, and it's an incredibly powerful animal, and often quite large in comparison to us. And in essence, they could do anything they wanted, and yet they allow us to work with them, and they allow us to ride them, and they allow us to be near them, most of the time without any sort of reaction, any sort of violent reaction or anything. It just amazes me. Why would they do that? Why do they do this?
I mean, it's hard to say. You know, if I was to tap into my hippie side, I would say that think horses they've definitely come along on the human journey. They've decided to be part of it. I mean, if you look at how animals have evolved with mankind, horses have always been around. And each time we come to what looks like a finish, they find another way to manifest into our lives. So horses are definitely here for us, I think.
And that's been proven quite a lot recently, because they've been used in equine therapy, haven't they? Which really does make a difference, I think, to a lot of people.
It's definitely a growing type of therapy. It's been in the States for quite a long time, and they're actually starting to use it in the UK now as well, for lots of problems, but it's really common for behavioural problems with children, and for anybody on the autistic spectrum.
Now, you had, because you've had a fascinating life in horses, and you did have an opportunity to work with Dressage Ireland when you were quite young, but you turned it down to travel, and you ended up in the States. Why was that, and what were you doing out there?
I fell in love.
Ah!
I was a small town Irish boy, and I fell in love when I moved to New York.
And you worked with some fantastic people out there, didn't you?
I had an extraordinary time while I was out there. I mean, it really was a superb environment to be in. And I went from being a very big fish in a small pond to a tiny fish in a really big pond, but I loved it. I swam as strong as I could. But New York is a particularly fantastic state, because I think you have the pool of everybody who has drive and ambition and a goal and a dream, and they've all landed in New York, and that energy is still there, that you know, vibration is still there. So people want to help, and they want to do, and it was great to be part of that.
And your interesting life appears to have been, or is going to be written into a book. Tell us about that.
Well, it had been suggested a few times, but then I met up with a guy who said that he'd always wanted to write a biography. And he asked, there might have been 1 or 2 glasses of wine, he asked, could he write my story? And I said, let's do it. So we had more glasses of wine. He wrote the kind of the synopsis, or the back cover, and we sent that back and forward a few times. And then he sent me a message and he said, could we get sued for anything that could be written in this book? So we're going to leave it for a couple of years.
That makes it sound like there's some pretty tasty stories in there,
I mean,
Ivan.
horse people are extraordinary folk. We are a little crazy, so there's lots of stories.
Can you just tell us one?
No, I couldn't possibly.
Oh, so disappointed. So can anybody get involved in dressage then?
Yes, sometimes it's built into a little bit of a mystery, but dressage is basically, it's the oldest equestrian discipline. It's 4,500 years old. They know what they're doing. They've come up with a recipe that works. It's just body mechanics for horses. It's just systematic training that's really simple to apply.
He makes it sound so easy, doesn't he? So if anyone wanted to find out more then about what you do and maybe have a go at dressage, what's the best way of them finding out?
There's lots of groups and organisations on the island, but I would steer you to my website. But you'll find me on Facebook or Blogger or Instagram, any of those two.
I've been working in the investments industry for nearly 20 years and getting increasingly frustrated with the waffle and the jargon that goes on, and frankly the boring content that we put out. So I'm a big believer in the power of investing, but I also have loads of friends and people I talk to who think it's not for them, they don't understand it, they're turned off by it. So really what I'm trying to do with Boring Money is to get through to people who have felt disengaged before and to try and talk to them about it in normal language.
Because there is that perception, isn't there, that this is a man's world. It is, people shouting each other across this room, and it is a very, very testosterone-fueled environment.
It still is a boys' club. It's not uncommon for me to go to meetings in the city and you walk into a room and there's 15 guys sitting around a table and me. So I think, this does matter because we tend to write content for people who look like us. There's that empathy thing. So I think a lot of the content that the industry churns out is aimed at 50-year-old or 60-year-olds or affluent golf-playing, Range Rover driving men. And there's a big chunk of the community that we're just neglecting and not talking to. So we can see from the stats that women are putting their fingers in their ears and not saving in the stock market. And I think we've got to do something about this because we're storing up problems for ourselves down the track when women my age, I'm currently 44, so my peer group are going to retire. And if we've been sitting in cash with interest rates as they are today, we're not going to be very well off.
So one of your aims, as you mentioned then, is to speak to women without any of the jargon, just talk in plain language. Talk to us in that plain language now then, Holly. Tell us why we should be interested in investing. Interest
rates today are really low. So what are your options? I think the options we have are the stock market. Now, loads of women say to me, I can't, it's not for me, Holly, I'm not rich enough. Well, you can get going with just £25 a month. So if you can set up a direct debit for £25 a month, you can be an investor. Another thing people say to me is, I'm risk averse. It's like gambling, isn't it? I can't, Beth, look at anyone in the eye and say, I can guarantee what you're going to get in the stock market. But I do know that over a longer term time frame, the odds are heavily stacked in favour of the stock market. So if we're talking about a 10-year time frame, you're 90% more likely to do better in the stock market than you are in cash. I think the third thing I'd say to women is there's this assumption that we somehow need to have sort of PhDs in maths to be an investor and to get going. We have today things which I call the investment equivalent of ready meals. You can go online, answer 6 or 7 simple questions about yourself, and someone will give you a sort of, here's a portfolio we made earlier. So I'd just like to sort of challenge some of the preconceptions that women have and to say, actually, maybe you can get going with less than you thought, and maybe you can get going without needing to be an expert.
Just want to take you back to that risk element, Holly, because I think some of the women that you're aiming at are going to be bringing up families. I mean, they may be working as well, but the idea that they're not spending money on their children at a time when they need it is something that sort of goes against a lot of women, I would say.
I think that's right, and I identify with that. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, but I do talk to a lot of women who are neglecting their own needs and putting their kids first, and women with older kids too, very worried about how they can help them get on the property ladder. But we do have to factor in the fact that, we're living longer, we're saving less than guys, the average woman earns less than a guy, and we know that the average woman's retirement income is likely to be about £5,000 a year lower than men. So I think I would say to women, think about chipping away, even if it's starting with small amounts, and putting a pot of money aside for yourself. You see, Beth, I think we're all a lot more commercial than we realise. We watch programs about the stock market, we watch things like Dragon's Den, we understand small business concepts, and our kids do too. So I think it's just trying to sort of be very upfront with them, have those conversations from an early stage, and try and demystify finance. I mean, at the end of the day, all you're doing with the stock market is saying, do I think that company's going to do well, yes or no? And we're actually a lot more street smart than many of us realise.
Did you watch Wolf of Wall Street?
I did. Now, it's not quite that bad in the city, but I have to say it's still a bit of a boys' club and it's still quite blokey. And actually, the Wolf of Wall Street, I have to say, I mean, I laughed a bit along the way, but Beth, it made me angry because there are still too many fat cats doing this for their own good, and I think they are a rarity, but they give all of us a bad name. So I watched it, I kind of laughed, but it made me feel a bit sick as well.
Well, Holly, really, really interesting to talk to you this morning, and it actually has made me think, maybe I could do it, because
you could, Beth. I think this is what women are better investors than men, because we resist the urge to fiddle. Men are trying to tinker with it the whole time. That's the worst thing you can do. So Beth, you may well be a natural born investor.
Before we move on, we do of course have to mention the news that today the UK has voted to leave the EU. Now, I was extremely shocked by this. I went to bed last night and it seemed after the first votes were in that we were safe. We were going to be remaining. I say safe because it just seemed to me like that was, the obvious choice. And then I woke up and there's stuff everywhere saying, no, we're leaving. Jo, how did it make you feel?
Well, when I woke up this morning, I had my son running into the room going, Mum, you will not believe this. And he told me, and I was really shocked, I have to say, because I thought we would be remaining. But by now, at 2:00 in the afternoon, all I can say is, I'm just over it. I am so over it. And I know it's important. I do understand, especially James Corden's tweet to me was brilliant.
He tweeted you, did he?
Yeah. Personally, his tweet that he put out saying that there is a worry for the future of our kids. I do understand that, and there is a lot of seriousness around this. There are obviously implications for the Isle of Man, but in all honesty, what is going on with social media? Suddenly, we've stopped talking about what we're having for dinner, and now we've all become politicians. It is absolutely crazy. I've had to turn it off. It's crazy what's going on there.
But Jenny, isn't it better that we do talk about these things on social media rather than what we're having for dinner?
I think there is an element of, that we should talk about it. It's important. But at the same time, it's been overdone now. I totally agree with Jo. I've seen so many states. You're scrolling down the news feed and there's, I don't know how many people having their opinion on it. And I must say that most people were wanting to stay, the ones that I've seen. And it was a shock for me as well this morning. I honestly thought that we were staying.
All I can say is, have you learnt more by reading on social media? Have you actually understood more about it?
No, I wouldn't say so, no.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It's extremely complicated, and that's why I think it's kind of odd that we, well, not we, because we weren't part of it, but the nation in a way was left to make such a crucial decision.
I think you're right. Inviting the nation, and Beth actually put something brilliant on Facebook herself.
Did, yeah.
She asked the question, if you don't want to know the answer, don't ask the question. And it's a really, really valid point.
Which is what Cameron will be thinking now. That I think is the most... Who? Cameron.
Who?
That's the worrying thing, isn't it? Who's going to replace Cameron? Oh, dear me. Interestingly, I thought the statistics were fascinating because if you look at the stats for those that voted to remain, 75% of 18 to 24-year-olds wanted to remain. 56%, so still the majority of 25 to 49 wanted to remain. But when you start getting into the over 50s, you get down to 39 and 40% that voted to remain. So I think that's what we're sort of looking at, is it's the older generation who sort of swung it, which means means that it's sort of leaving us to deal with it. I'm classing myself as the younger generation now. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that anymore, but
Baby
I am
boomers.
I am, yeah. And obviously we're not part of the EU, but it will obviously still affect us with regards to trade, freedom of movement, business, the strength of the pound, obviously, which has already dropped today. So our guest today is Jane Hall from the Manx Art Directory. Thank you for coming back and joining us again, Jane. It's lovely to have you.
Delighted to be here.
And what do you make of all this then?
You know, the way I look at it, and I probably class myself with, you know, the older generation, is that, you know, the older generation, I think, are probably looking out for the younger generation. You know, they've got more life experience, and, you know, I'm hopeful that we've done the right thing by exiting. You know, you can't know, can you? But I was thinking before, it's a bit like the European Union being your boss or an employer, and, you know, the UK being the employee. Now, do you want to stay and be an employee? Okay, you get paid every month and you've got a little package of benefits, which is all very nice and that kind of thing. Or do you want to take a risk? You know, do you want to go self-employed? You know, some people might crash and burn self-employed, but others fly, you know, and, you know, you might find wings. And I think that the British people are resilient and strong and creative. And, you know, I think you've got to look on the bright side and hope that it's the best decision.
I came over to Isle of Man about 11 years ago and did martial arts for over 15. So a couple of years back, I thought I'll start my own company. And yeah, I started teaching, so doing bits of boxing, some jiu-jitsu, lots of self-preservation, I guess, and it's all for personal development mainly. So it's a little bit different than just a typical martial art class. And it's worldwide. Crazy Monkey Defense Program is a worldwide program, so it's a excellent thing to do. Just join and be a part of a worldwide community.
And people may also recognise you from not just your classes, but also from being out on a night out. Is that right?
Not really. I do work on the doors, though. Not as much these days, but I used to do it most of the weekends.
She's so lovely and just so smiley and really sort of petite, and you wouldn't think that you'd be able to, you know, kind of stand there on the doors and rah and try and stop people from being naughty or whatever. Have you ever had to actually get into any altercations with anyone?
I did quite a bit, actually. It goes two ways. They either don't wanna because you're a girl, or they start on you because you're a girl. But I think I like it because I'm small. I think it shows that with a good technique and, you know, good background and everything like that, you can really do anything you want.
For anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about when we're talking about crazy monkeys, because there's literally isn't you going to a zoo and acting like a crazy monkey. What is it? What is it that you're doing?
Okay. Crazy Monkey is a really new martial art program. It originated in South Africa. There are a little bit of differences being like a technical stuff, and it's all based in first being able to be safe and defend yourself, and then the kind of violence and attack. But it's mainly like a big difference is in an approach. So it is boxing based and it is a proper martial art program, but the way we approach it is really playful. It's very mindful, and although it's functional, we don't beat each other up every single class, but we progress the client to get to that level, basically, where they can take strong punches and handle themselves mentally and physically as well.
So why did you want to get involved with this?
As a kid, I always loved those films where you had the warrior and then like they went through all that hardship and in the end they came out, and you always got at the end that person who is really calm, who doesn't really fight unless it's really important, but he's just well-rounded, like whether it's mentally, he's really educated, you know, it's got every aspect of the life, and I always loved that. So I gone into like martial arts, and but I couldn't really find it because it's all about technical stuff, it's all about competition, and it used to be very much a meathead man kind of environment. And it wasn't until about 10 years back where one of my friends started Crazy Monkey over here, and as soon as we started, it's brought everything back into that old-fashioned kind of warriorship, in which, you know, you've got to progress as a whole person, not just technically, but mentally. You've got to constantly learn. Even us as trainers, we constantly, you know, if I stop, I can't teach because I'll be kicked out of the program. So I still got to progress.
Do you think there's a lot of women on the Isle of Man who have an inner warrior then. Have you met lots of women with inner warriors?
I think everybody got it. You just got to, and I'm not saying, it doesn't have to be with martial arts, but everybody has it, and it's just finding the right way of bringing it out. And I love martial arts, I always did, so whether it's like a mental game aspect, whether it's a bit of like a psychology or building up confidence or just fitness, I love martial arts, so this is why I did through martial arts. It's more, martial arts are more of a vehicle to everything else.
You've mentioned that you're one of the only women who is involved in this on the island and other aspects of martial arts. But do you think it's important that, especially young women are equipped with these skills to be able to defend themselves in the wider world?
Yes, absolutely. I think, well, in reality, most of the people not gonna get attacked. But for women, at least I found it on myself, it's that confidence, and if it happens, I can stand my chance. And nothing's 100%, but I'll put up a fight. And I think that's really important because that gives you the confidence, that gives you the respect for yourself as well as a woman. So you don't, you don't walk down the street as a victim anymore because you can do it. But again, it's, defending yourself, it's about more self-preservation. It's not just the technical stuff. It starts with, if I see a guy walking towards me I don't like because I got a bad feeling about him, it's about me walking through to the other side of the road and not having to pass him. So I'm trying to teach all of these aspects. But yeah, absolutely.
Right, so another bit of news here. Former Miss Great Britain Zara Holland has had her crown taken from her after having sex on television.
Did you say that?
I did. The 20-year-old from Hull left ITV2's Love Island shortly after being filmed getting intimate with fellow contestant Alex Bowen.
What is with that voice when you say those words?
I'm a bit uncomfortable saying it live on air.
So you
That's
wouldn't host,
why
you wouldn't be a presenter on Love Island then, would you?
No, I wouldn't. She did say, I regret it. I shouldn't have done it on national TV. I feel like I've let my mum down and my family down. Gosh, I hope her mum wasn't watching. Oh my word.
It's just wrong.
But the interesting thing about this is that her crown was taken from it. It was given to the pageant's runner-up. The organisers of Miss Great Britain said, we have no problem at all with sex. However, we simply cannot condone a reigning title holder doing so on television. Now, I found this fascinating, actually, because the fact that they've taken her crown from her, it's that thing, isn't it? They're kind of saying by taking her crown from her, you are not the kind of person we want to be representing young women as Miss Great Britain. Does Miss Great Britain really represent young women nowadays?
Such a good point. Such a good point. And also, it's all about beauty.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, beauty enhances other things too, doesn't it? And when it comes to that, you just think, okay, is it her fault or actually the TV production team's fault? Because they shouldn't have aired it. They shouldn't have aired it. It's unfortunate for her that they've decided to air this because they put these people on an island together in the hope that might happen, so therefore, is it her fault? Is it the production team company's, the TV program's problem? Oh, I just can't get my words out on it. Whose fault is it? Should she have been more aware of the title and therefore not?
She chose to go on it in the first place, didn't she?
So she knew maybe what was going to happen?
Yeah, what do you make of this, Jane Hall?
Well, yes, rather embarrassing, isn't it? In the old days, it always used to be that, if you're a beauty queen or whatever, you were supposed to act in a certain way and be, and that's obviously what they're upholding here or trying to uphold. As for representing people today, I wasn't even aware that these beauty pageants really still went on in the UK.
Yeah.
It used to be a big thing back in the 70s, Miss World and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, Miss Isle of Man. Yeah,
there was Miss Isle of Man, wasn't there?
I was involved with it for a short time.
Terry Kringle wasn't he?
Really? Jenny?
Does he look nice in a frock?
I don't know how to follow that now.
I think we'll just leave that one there. Jenny, what do you make of this story?
All that I was going to say was that I feel quite sorry for the runner-up, really, because, it's like, here you go, here's your crown now that the main girl had a bit of a slip-up.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's the whole thing, isn't it? To be fair, like you're saying, Jane, there's supposed to be standards, aren't there? They're supposed to be representing something, I don't know, traditional, I would have thought, if they're still doing these pageants. But
these women?
I know that's the thing. That's what I was going to say. She is the absolute epitome of a sort of cover model, really, isn't she?
And
when
all
you
the
look
fake
at her.
stuff that happens
Yeah.
to make it happen. It didn't happen in the old days, did it? So is she at fault?
Yeah, well, they should have stopped it going on the programme in the first place if they had a problem with it. I mean, the fact they said, yeah, go ahead, go on Love Island. Well, what was going to happen?
Did
really?
she ask the permission of them to go on
Who
it?
knows? Who knows?
People have discovered that actually it's a great way to earn a little bit of extra cash. They've got a spare bedroom, or perhaps a little cottage in their garden, or something in the garden. It's a way to earn some extra money, and who's not going to want to do that? In terms of from a guest perspective, I think it's a fantastic way to actually just really immerse yourself into a local culture and local society. You're getting everything from the people who are there. You can get advice, information. Where's the best bakers? Is the pub round the corner great, or should I go across the road? And I think it's a great way of actually really making yourself part of that area and that society.
So do you have a duty as one of the hosts then to sort of give that sort of travel information then?
I don't think you've got a duty to do that, but I think all the best ones do. I would always ask somebody if they were going to think about reserving an Airbnb style accommodation, read the reviews, read what other people have said about the place and where they've stayed. And the best ones will give you plenty of information about what there is to do in the local area, what you can see and do, where to eat. And those are the best ones to go to.
And obviously you're from Admiral Insurance, Justin, so I'm intrigued to know, would that affect your insurance in any way to have sort of random strangers coming in and staying?
For most insurance companies, it does. I mean, a lot of insurers will have an exclusion where they won't cover you. So if you do have a guest and they do cause damage, they pour a bottle of wine on your sofa, there's a good chance you won't be covered. So we have launched something called Host Insurance, which is an add-on to your home insurance to make sure you are covered through these. But most of the home sharing sites, they also have a guarantee in place. The difficulty is that some of them require you to negotiate with the guest first. So if they cause some damage, you'll need to approach them first. You may have to prove that the guest caused the damage. So you couldn't just say, this wasn't hanging off the wall before and suddenly it is. You need to prove that it was them. And quite often you'll have to pay for it up front and then try and claim from the sharing site yourself. So it's not always that straightforward. So I think it's just making sure, speak to your insurance company. They may cover you, but as I said, a lot of companies won't. They will have an exclusion.
And Lisa was saying there about how it's a good idea to check the reviews if you're going to stay at someone else's place. But presumably, certainly with regards to this insurance side of things, it must be a good idea to sort of vet the people that are coming as well. Can you do that?
I guess it's a bit trickier because you can't. There's not a site that lists the guests, but certainly speak to them before, and find out a little bit about them. Maybe speak to them on the phone. Certainly email them and get a bit more information from them, who they are, what they like to do, and it's just courtesy really. You're getting to know somebody a little bit, who's going to be staying in your house after all. So why not make the effort to get to know them a little bit better?
You must have come across some pretty special Airbnbs so far.
Well, that's right, and that's the great thing about it. We're not talking about going and staying in a very budget, boring hotel with the same white bed that you'd see anywhere else. There are some amazing ones out there. There's castles, there's tree houses, all sorts of really different, unusual places to go and stay. And that's what being on holiday is all about, isn't it? It's about really sort of stretching yourself and going and experiencing and seeing something different from your everyday life.
And it's interesting because actually yesterday we were talking to some guys from a new company called Vroomy who are doing something very similar, but with regards to letting out people's homes for people to go and work in them. So using them as sort of office spaces. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Uber as well. And I wonder, is this the way we're going now, that sort of the people are sort of taking over these small businesses and just using what we've got to make ourselves a little bit of money?
I think it is. It's called the sharing economy, and it's becoming a lot more popular. So it's whether it's you use your car and let somebody share the car with you, or your home, or your space in your home for an office. It's the way that the world is going, and certainly in the age of social media, where people are using the internet in new ways, I think it's only going to become more popular and more commonplace.
And before you go, I have to ask you, there was a lovely fun bit attached to this research asking who would be the UK's ultimate guests and who would be the worst. So who came out on top?
I think really surprisingly, number one was Kate and William, which I don't know whether they'd be that interested in going to stay in the average person's house. I think they've got plenty of other options. Second most popular was David Attenborough, who would be a fantastic guest to have and would be great company, I think. Least popular, very topical, was Donald Trump. Again, I'm not sure whether he'd be interested in staying in most people's houses. And he was followed by Katie Hopkins, who I'm sure would be a very controversial guest to have.
Thank you for listening to our Best Bits of the Week. If you missed any of last week's programmes and would like to hear them in full, you can listen on demand at manxradio.com for 7 days after broadcast. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at MR Women Today.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.